Okay, it is 7:03 PM, and I'm calling the June 16th, 2026 Planning Board meeting to order. The meeting is being recorded by HW Cam. I'll begin by taking roll. Potentially Matt Hamill is appearing via Zoom. He did contact me and indicate that he may be a little late. I also heard from Bill Wheaton, Beth Herr, and Jeff Austin. They will not be in attendance this evening. So when I call your name, would you please indicate that you're present? Jonathan Poor?
Jonathan Poor, present.
Emil Dahlquist?
Emil Dahlquist, present.
Darcy Dale?
Darcy Dale, present.
And Marnie Crouch, present. So we do have a quorum, and we can proceed. So the first item on our agenda is review and approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes from May 5th, May 19th, and May 26th. I hate to say this, but as usual, I have several stylistic corrections to each set of minutes, none of which are substantive. Is there any discussion about the minutes, and does anybody else have any corrections that they would like to bring to the board's attention?
There's a small correction in the May 5th minutes, which you probably already picked up on, which said the board will hold a extra meeting. Probably would be an extra meeting, but that's not really substantive, but a substantive change
Oh,
would be...
could you tell me where that might
Sure.
be? Because I'm not sure I picked it
Okay.
up.
May 5th,
Yep,
under vote, under the first item, it says the board will hold a extra meeting for this application on May 26th.
oh, you're right, I didn't pick that up, Jonathan.
Minor thing. But more substantively, in the workshop on May 26th, I don't remember where it was in the discussion, but I brought up under section 9.8.2.2D, building footprint, that unenclosed porches less than 8 feet deep do not contribute to the calculation of the building footprint, but it was unclear sort of what happens when it's more than 8 feet. So I think a thought was to put that in the minutes and see if we want to clarify that in the code in the future.
Right,
No,
so
that's a lot of words.
it's a lot of words.
I can write that up.
If you just shoot
I didn't
Mark,
type it, but I can write
but
it up.
if you shoot him, I'm going to give him my minor edits, and if you just send the email with your proposed text.
Yep.
And in that, in those minutes from May 26th, it's the fourth paragraph from the bottom. It says, Emil Dahlquist asked whether mixed-use properties could be designated either solely residential or solely commercial by the developer. And I just changed that because it didn't quite make sense. And now it reads as follows. Emil Dahlquist asked whether properties in the Willow Street mixed-use sub-district could be designated either solely residential or solely commercial by a developer. Does that make more sense?
Sure.
I think so.
Darcy, you're
yes,
always a good person for...
I didn't find anything in the minutes, which means I probably didn't read them well enough, but I did go through them. And I want to move to accept the meeting minutes from May 5th, May 19th, and May 26th, 2026, as amended.
Just one, I had one minor change. In the May 19th minutes, the member of the public who spoke, it can be hard to hear them when they speak, but I just double checked the clerk. It lists him as Don Levitt, but his name is actually Benjamin Ravette.
Oh, well, could you make that correction? You
Sure.
probably know how to spell his name.
Yes.
So, second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
And the next item on our agenda is a continued hearing on the site plan application that's being proposed by Select Energy Development LLC with respect to these solar canopies on a portion of the parking lot at the middle school. And at our last meeting, we requested that the applicant provide more specific information about how the lighting fixtures in the canopy would be mounted, and I believe they have addressed that issue. And in addition, we wanted a lighting plan, and I believe that they have provided that as well. So do any planning board members have any issues with what has been submitted? The photometric plan.
Just a couple of questions. I assume the photometric plan is only for the canopy lights, does not include the existing ground lights that are, or pole lights that are adjacent to the canopies? So it's just what's under the canopy?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. One kind of minor thing I noticed in the plan you have, which is, looking for a number on this, but it's proposed a roof-mounted solar system. There's no number on this plan issued for 1A. Anyway, yeah, that's the one. If you look at some of those red dots are the new luminaires, and they're centered on the canopies, obviously, and then I think several of those lights will have to change location a little bit because they coincide with columns that are supporting the canopy. Again, you're going to move it a couple of feet one way or another, I guess, and just when you do the installation. But like the center columns on the top canopy array and the bottom one would coincide with the structural system supporting the canopies. And the others I'm not sure about, because I know you varied the number of poles, like 5, 6, and 5 is kind of the number, I think, going across the array.
And that's correct, yes.
that's-
So we'll do a close coordination there with the columns and
Yeah.
the fixture locations, correct?
Right. So it's just a minor thing. It's not a thing. But I see you have adjusted in that diagram in the upper left-hand corner. You have shown that, and it looks as though the structure itself would provide a baffle to some of that lighting, beyond probably 90 degrees. But anyway, I don't have any questions on that particular one. What I assume would be the case there is that, because of that angle on that you're not going to see the bottom of those fixtures from a distance away. But that's really going to be relatively minor, in my opinion. So that's the only question I had on those. I think you provided the information we were asking for, I believe. And the numbers read appropriate foot candle numbers on the grade level. I think there are still questions about how best for lighting control, in terms of dimming at particular times. That kind of discussion, I think, may take place tonight. How that can be controlled and who's going to do it, and, what that process might be. So I don't know if anybody else has questions on that, on the drawings.
I noticed that, excuse me, the lights will be turned off from 10 PM to 6 AM, and I'm wondering if that's too late at night, if it could be turned off a little earlier, if that was an issue for anyone.
Well, I think that, just thinking out loud, I think under normal circumstances, it could be turned off earlier, but for example, if there was some type of performance at the high school and there was spillover parking,
Yes.
so one would hope that the school district was sensitive to the neighbors, but I'm not that sanguine about that. So I think it's important that we have some time periods
Yeah.
outlined in our conditions. And because of the fact that there might, especially in the winter, there might be instances when that lighting is necessary, we shouldn't try and make it too early because, and similarly, not too late either. So.
It's kind of tricky because
It's tricky.
the
Well,
way that the light varies so much here, like this time of year, you
Yes.
probably wouldn't even have the lights on
Right.
for maybe an hour, and then you have to dim them. So you could do it, you could base it on like dawn and dusk, but I think that would be hard for the high school to, because
Yes.
that's constantly changing. So,
10 PM seems pretty reasonable to me. I mean, it's not early, but it's not 11 o'clock either.
Right.
So I know Mark has drafted some conditions. I don't know if you all have had an opportunity to review them, and I know that we have an abutter here, and I don't know whether you would like to address the planning board, Ms. Giroux? Sure.
My name is Ann Giroux. I live at 821 Bay Road. I'm a direct abutter to the project. I think I'd like to start out just by thanking the applicant and the planning board for taking the time to work through some of these issues. I think what's on the table now is so much better than what was originally submitted. So for that, I really say thank you. I have two comments, and the first one has to do with this lights out requirement. And the way the recommended conditions are worded right now is that at the lights out time, whether it's 9 or 10 or whatever, that the lights could either be dimmed or be extinguished. And I would ask that if it is a reasonable time, and Marnie has suggested 10 o'clock, that the lights be extinguished at that time. I really don't think there's a need for dimmed lights there at midnight or at 2 in the morning or at 4 in the morning. I think that 10 o'clock would be reasonable if that really is a time when lights are out. And I do know that when the applicant was here earlier, the applicant did say that there was an ability to have a manual override. So if there's ever an event that the school needs it beyond the 10 o'clock, and I really can't even envision what that would be, the school would have the ability to override for that event. So I really don't see a total extinguishment as being a problem.
Could I just interject there? I appreciate that point, because there's other lighting in the parking lot. It's not as if the lights underneath the solar arrays are going to be the sole source of light in the parking lot. So it's not like someone leaving the high school or the middle school is going to be stumbling around in the dark. Correct?
That's correct. And I do know as well that if you look at the diagram in the upper left-hand corner of the diagram, the parking in that area is not visible from Bay Road. So the police, several times a night, drive through the entire parking lot. They drive back down by the parking by the football field, and then they come around and they drive around the middle school. I don't think it's going to make any difference to security or lighting in that parking lot to have the canopy lights totally extinguished by 10 o'clock. There are very, very few activities that happen at the middle school
After that.
beyond even 9 o'clock.
Do any board members have any comments with respect to that? Do you agree with that, or?
That seems like a reasonable request, and
Yeah,
it's
I
an
think-
easy modification in the conditions.
Yeah. The only reservation I have about that is whether there's some liability, insurance liability on the part of the school system that would impose particular lighting requirements on them. I don't, Mark, do you have any idea whether that is something that,
well, Marnie's right, there are obviously other lights, but
Yeah.
it will be a little dark because the canopies are going to shade some of that light because it's coming from higher up. So if it could be made motion activated, that I think
Yeah.
would be a way to
yeah,
address the
Ah,
security
Well,
issue.
Yes.
Or the idea of the manual override. would solve that also, so that the school had control over that. So it was a conscious decision to override it for a specific need. I would think that would address the insurance
if that
concerns.
if there is an insurance issue here, and that's the only thing I can think of, you know, that, where the school is obliged to keep it lit.
I would think if the school has control over that manual override, then
Yeah.
it becomes the school's responsibility to
Right,
manage it properly,
right,
and not the town's responsibility.
right. And that would apply if there was some type of event.
Yeah.
But if there's no event, then anyone hovering around the middle school is probably trespassing and up to no good. That's just a surmise. But yes, so Mark, does that satisfy your request? Is that,
On that issue, yes. I have one other comment.
right, so I'm just going to, circle this around. So Mark, we will have the exterior lighting extinguished at 10 PM, subject to a potential override by the Hamilton Wenham School District in the event that there is some type of activity at the middle school after that time.
Sure.
Okay, and then your next item?
The second comment has to do with an existing light, and it's shown on the plan as an existing light on a woodshed. Again, it's up in the northwest corner. It's a small shed. It has a very bright light on it, unshielded, very blue. All winter long, I can see it from my house. It's really quite glaring. With all this lighting in the canopies, I would ask that woodshed lighting be converted to one that's shielded, that shields the facade of the building. That light is no longer needed to light the parking lot, which is what it does right now. So if that could be converted to a shielded facade lighting for security purposes, I think that would be great. Have it be 3,000 kelvins or less. And for lumens, I was looking up what kind of a residential garage light would be in terms of lumens for again, just lighting the facade as opposed to lighting the parking lot. And I saw between 1,000 and 1,200 lumens. You may have more knowledge than I do about what may be an appropriate light there, but the light that's there right now is certainly not needed, given what we're seeing on this photometric plan, to shine into that parking lot.
So my question, Madam Chair, would be, is that something we can condition or just suggest? Because it's really outside of the purview of the application here.
It's outside the purview of the application because I don't think the applicant is proposing any
It's context.
alteration
No.
of that light at all. It's really not part of
It's
the
context, not
project.
design. So I
Right.
think we can suggest it, but I don't think we can condition it.
Right, I agree. Mark,
Would
can
you have any?
You can
opinion about that?
request, yes, and they've
Can
worked with us, and they might just be willing to do that.
Yep.
Yeah,
So maybe we put that in the minutes as a request, but
Right.
not in the conditions.
yeah. Unfortunately, because it's not part of the actual application, the Dover Amendment kicks in, and we have absolutely no ability to just spontaneously, if you will, ask the Hamilton Wenham. We can ask them to do it, but we cannot compel them to do it.
Understood. All right, thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, so we're all set with that. So at this point, I think I can entertain a motion to approve the site plan application of what are we dealing with here? Select Energy Development LLC,
With the conditions as modified.
with the conditions as stated in this hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, thank you for your patience, and thank you, Ann, for your contributions.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, now to the fun stuff. wherever you want to be. So the next item is our workshop with UTIL, and I'm sure we have great slides and some interesting information to be presented.
Yes.
I got cold all of a sudden.
Yeah, interesting. I'll work on it for you here.
Before you start, I just want to note for the minute taker that Matt Hamill is now here via Zoom. Go ahead.
Full screen, just Control L. There. Okay, I think this is forwarded, a slightly different version, I think was forwarded to you guys to look at, but, last time that we met, we walked through, feedback. We walked through a sort of sample, prototypical new development or vacant site, and how we would apply the code and interpret various elements. This time what we've done is analysis on a couple of sites that have existing non-conforming structures on them, which is a slightly more complicated from an interpretation standpoint, but we've cycled through some sort of scenarios that will raise some interesting questions and give this board a sense of how you might apply some of the provisions regarding non-conforming structures. We selected two sites with Mark's help. In general, there's two pieces to this. You know, the state regulates how nonconformities are addressed when you are adding or modifying a one or two family home. Certain allowances are sort of required so long as nonconformities are not increased or new nonconformities are introduced. And then there's a kind of second standard for all other kinds of structures, which as it's written in this code is more or less the same. So the spirit of it is you are allowed to add to a structure so long as you're not increasing its nonconformity. This gets maybe a little bit more complicated when we are adding a totally new structure, and I'll get to that. So first we're going to look at, in each of these scenarios, we look at an addition and then a kind of a new structure and what kinds of rules might be triggered. On the right here, you see all the, in our analysis, all the various sort of regulations and dimensional standards that we sort of are hitting up against even with these sort of simple interventions. So 17 Mill Street, I believe this is an office. It's being used as a daycare, but it's essentially a kind of non-residential use right now. You'll see that if I go to here, you'll see that it doesn't, it's quite non-conforming relative to our new code. There's almost zero setbacks in the front and the side. It doesn't meet the frontage requirement. It's one story. I don't know.
Can you move the box?
Move that little window. Can you move the box? 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 Can you m done a kind of quick analysis here of site dimensions, building dimensions, and parking and open space standards. And then anything that's sort of red is indicating that we're missing the mark, if you will. So we tested out what an addition might be. Let's say they wanted to extend this along the rear. Would this be allowed by right? Our interpretation is no, because it's essentially increasing the amount of nonconformity along the back in terms of its the rear yard setback. There are some other sort of possible consequences as well. You look at an open space minimum. What open space it did have, which was probably not 40% required, is further diminished. And so again, it's essentially an addition that is making this structure even less conforming than it was. So I think that's pretty straightforward.
Can I ask it? Can we interrupt, ask a question? Okay. Suppose your addition was to put a second level on part of that original building. So you're not using up more land. You're still meeting the FAR, and it's a two-story now because that's allowed in the code. Would that then make this, we would have to allow this then?
So this is one of those complicated
Yeah.
situations, right? So traditionally, because the side setbacks and the rear setbacks
Mhm.
are not met, the net effect of a second story
Oh, so you're increasing the nonconformity then,
is a form of extending a nonconformity.
because of the setbacks?
Increasing it.
I get it, okay.
On the other hand, we're bringing it closer into compliance
Yeah,
for being a two-story building.
right,
So there's another
yeah.
analogous situation that I'll get to in a second, but yes, that's a kind of fine.
We really don't want to have to address that, do we?
It's highly unlikely. No one would ever randomly add a second story to this building. I think they would tear it down.
Tear it down, yeah, that's true,
So,
yeah.
We always think about what if someone adds a story? No one ever adds a story.
No, right, and this building especially is a tear down, yeah,
So maybe, yeah, so.
not to worry.
But it's a very good question.
But the line of reasoning is interesting because there could be other situations,
Yeah.
not here, where you're decreasing or following, the code, decreasing the nonconformity, but in some other component, you're increasing it,
Yeah.
and what's the balance, and what's
Yes.
the, how do you
And I'll get
test
to
it?
that. There's
Okay.
one other
I'll stop.
that's like that.
Okay.
So here's a second scenario where the existing building remains and developer or the owner has added a brand new structure. In this scenario, we're seeing this as generally complying. It's meeting the minimum setback, the maximum setback. It's meeting the side setbacks. I think we've scaled this so that it meets FAR. It's 2 stories. Now, here's where it gets tricky. You'll see we sort of added back a little green space here, right? So this is really not meeting the full 40% that would be required for a brand new site, but maybe it's enough to offset whatever was lost so that it is not less conforming. But it brings up a much bigger question, which is when you are adding a new structure to a parcel that also has a pre-existing non-conforming structure or site features, to what extent does that new building bring the obligation of all of the site features?
Yeah.
And that's, I will say, I don't think that is explicitly addressed in the code. It may be something that you may want to address, but honestly, I think it's a kind of a judgment call.
Are there precedents in other form-based codes for policymaking?
Not that I found yet. But
Would, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, but would such a situation require a special permit? Because the planning board, if it's making a decision about a special permit is given more deference than, for example, it was just a site plan
That's the
review.
easiest way to address this, right? So it's explicit that you can, in the case that you may be increasing a nonconformity, you have that option to get a special
To
permit.
require it, and that gives the planning board a bit more discretion in
Yes.
issuing a decision.
Was that an option, though, on Willow Street? You know, what was determined was that it was not compliant in 3 ways. That what was being proposed on Willow. And so we were, in a sense, locked out of a special permit situation. I don't know if you can, is the code written so you can't override that, or with,
Well, Willow Street was an application for a special permit, but we couldn't issue it.
okay,
So
okay,
you would want to require a special permit in this instance.
I see.
So you
Then
could either allow it or deny it, depending on,
Yeah, so in this case, the new structure is in and of itself compliant.
Yeah,
It's the question is to
Yeah.
what extent does the addition of that new structure bring with it further obligations to
Right.
reduce nonconformities in the site
Yeah.
plan itself? In other words, or can we say that this is not increasing the nonconformity of the site overall and therefore it's compliant,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I think that would be the gentle, conservative way to approach this. But you as a planning board may want to have an opportunity to, require some, at least minimal site improvements. And the next example will show you, illustrates that more clearly.
Can I ask a question on the facade build-out ratio?
Yes.
The existing building looks like 0 lot line, built right on the lot line. Because it's outside the minimum maximum, does that contribute to the facade build-out ratio? You know what I'm saying, right there?
Oh, yeah, because it's here and not here.
Correct, and then now with the new building, which does fall within the range, are the two added together then to come up with the 35%?
I think we were seeing, what is it, 35%?
So the no there means it doesn't make it worse. Like before, it's not meeting 39%, so it's not less than what, like maybe it's 20%. So in this.
I think it was 20, it was 20% shy on the original.
So you're not adding or increasing the nonconformity as long as you are not below the 20%. So I guess we were counting it.
Yeah, and so
but
from
it doesn't matter.
building dimensional standards, the presence of the new building, it's not making the nonconformity worse, it's actually
Okay,
making it less nonconforming.
yeah,
Whether it's reaching the target percentage or not.
yeah. I'm sort of having to grapple with, what do you have to satisfy first, to make a judgment on the entire property, is it the build-to line, the minimum max on the front yard? Seems to be a very important one to
Yeah, I
satisfy,
don't,
but,
again, the way that the language is now, I don't think there's an obligation to meet one
Okay.
thing first or not. And I don't think there's any hierarchy. It's simply, are you making it less conforming, or are you creating a new nonconformity?
yeah, just one other example on it. If you had a building with, say, a deeper property, and you wanted to put an addition off the back of the building, and it was non-complying in terms of it's outside the front yard setback, that would be a case they put an addition on there because it doesn't make a non-conformance worse.
That would be, so long as it's within the rear setbacks.
But if you go to the side, and we're gonna come up to this, to the next one, then you actually are increasing the,
Well, this gets back to
yeah,
Jonathan's question about, we'll get to that.
okay.
Thanks.
This is just to or any was lost, but there may be knock-on effects to the parking, which is another question.
Right. Yeah.
So I presume you couldn't make the parking less compliant with the ratios.
Could I just ask then, this is to your point, maybe, and I might not articulate this very well, but if we were to ever amend this bylaw, we could have language to the effect that the front of the property and takes precedent over what happens in the rear of the property, and try and get some type of a hierarchy in terms of our evaluation. Because, as you say, you know, the front setbacks are more important to the neighborhood than the rear setbacks,
So that should be
potentially.
addressed first, and then once you
Right,
satisfy that.
exactly.
Now you can put an addition on the back or the side or what.
I would want to know if there were other codes that did that, because I would want to know whether that introduced tangled complexity in
Yeah.
executing it.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking out loud
I mean,
here, you know,
you
trying
that
to,
sounds good in theory, but I'd want to take that for test drive before I committed to that.
right,
I think the easier thing to do, that was a real concern, the easier thing to do would be to say that when you are adding an additional new structure, you know, go to special permit.
Right.
Right, that would just be the safest, because creating a kind of order of precedence.
It's going to tie yourself in a
Yeah.
knot.
Yep.
It's, you know.
Yeah.
Got to be flexible.
It'd be much better to take it on a case-by-case basis and
Exactly.
judge the special permit.
Yeah.
I think so.
I agree.
If that was the real concern, I
Yeah.
think so.
No,
And you could
agreed.
always have sort of an unspoken policy that you want to go back to the purposes, and the purposes are to make, to really manage the frontages and the street types. So
Right.
But that's more policy than.
But that's part of the special permit, too.
Yes, exactly.
So I was really just thinking out loud, but I think you are 100% right, is any new building special permit. And then the planning board then can evaluate the whole project using its discretion and the purposes. And since
Yes,
the
then the
purposes
have more weight.
have more weight, and since they focus a lot on the frontage.
The why.
Yeah, I mean, I would say any new building where there are non-conforming site features. Right.
Well, the new building has to be completely conformant.
Yeah, a new building.
Compliant, or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
So this one might get closer to answering some of these questions. This is
Yeah.
224 Bay Road. It has two structures on it. Did our best to sort of, you don't have a survey, you can see that these are a little crazy, but we developed our own dimensional standards just so there's something to compare to. This is a case where the front building is not conforming, it's set back too far. It's only 1.5 stories and not 2. I think we're seeing the second building is, let's pretend it's within the setbacks, the front, the side and the rear setbacks. Okay, one scenario is we are extending that rear building. And this gets to Emil's question is, are you allowed to do this before you fix your front? And I would say yes, because you're not making the property less conforming. The new addition, as we've done it here, isn't making the site itself even less conforming. We're assuming that it's occurring, it's not reducing the amount of open space because it's only on the asphalt portion of the site. You know, there may be some knock-on, again, parking effects, but I think in general, we would say that this is a case where nonconformities are not being increased. And it's not creating a new nonconformity. This is something you probably wouldn't be allowed to do, which is to completely replace that existing building with a 2-story one in its current location. Because it's essentially a new structure, it's not meeting the frontage requirements, et cetera, et cetera. think from a building standpoint, it's meeting the codes in terms of the building dimensional standards, and the site dimensional standards. What it then raises is, again, how obligated is this new development to, how obligated are they to sort of remedy other non-conforming site conditions? So you'll notice that there's for instance, a little parking space here, which is in the front yard. The parking has to be behind. It's a minor point, but it's the kind of thing that you guys probably talk a lot about, even something minor like that would come up. So this is really I think it's kind of a judgment call about how the planning board wants to direct these things. Again, I think one solution would be, your approach is to say that simply where there's a new structure on a site with pre-existing non-conforming site features, that, either you fix them or you maybe come for a special permit. And so the planning board can make a sort of judgment call.
Do you think that, just because, would the state have any issues with that for the 3A compliance purposes, since it's supposed to be by right, everything's supposed to be?
In this case, because this is a brand-new structure, and not, and it's a brand-new structure on a site that already has another building, I don't think those state protections of additions to non-conforming one and two family structures would apply.
Not that requirement, but what about the 3A requirement?
I don't think so, no, because this is a new structure. And you have your code, all you would be asking essentially is, this structure could, for instance, let's say, remedy that condition, somehow get their open space percentage up, to whatever the requirement, that they could in theory remedy all those things and have an as-of-right project.
Could they though? It'd be hard to have
Well,
parking and.
I mean, it's zoning, you can't do everything you want. I don't think 3A would protect them from that. I don't think it's violating 3A in any way. But I see where you're going, which is that the requiring a special permit and not just a site plan is a kind of a trigger. In this case, the special permit would only be to consider allowing the continuance of some non-conforming site features. Right? Now, let me sort of go back for a second. Okay, let's pretend that this developer wanted to just put a very thin addition on the front that didn't quite get them to the maximum setback. In that case, I would argue that while it's not meeting the maximum setback requirement, it is not increasing its nonconformity because it's getting a little closer. Now, however, if you wanted to put a side addition on this, let's pretend this were not meeting its, let's say you want to put a side addition on this that also was not meeting that setback zone. Are you increasing a nonconformity? It's a little bit like the building that's already encroaching on a side yard. Usually there's language that prevents you from making more of that building You know, it's called extending a nonconformity.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I don't know if that's a major sort of threat, but, you know, if it were a major concern, might be something you have to sort of call out or clarify with certain language. But,
But say where they were doing like an addition to the front, that would make the open space worse, right? So isn't it kind of like a pick your poison, like, do you want?
they would have to, yes, it would make the open space less conforming. They would have to replace it.
I see.
Now, this goes back a little bit to this example. Another question is, in this case, we've theoretically replaced the open space that was lost, but probably not gotten to the 40% requirement. Is that allowed? Are you allowed to, so you're technically not reducing your nonconformity with open space. You're sort of keeping the nonconformity where it is, but you're doing so by putting new open space in. And is that kind of the right, you know, once someone's putting it in, wouldn't you want to hold them to something higher? I don't know.
So there's a precedent in variances, nothing to do with this, but just to use it as an analogy, where if something is non-conforming and you want to add like to the side of it
Yep.
and make it no more non-conforming, let's say it's a 10-foot setback and you're 3 feet from the setback,
Yep.
and you put a side addition on and it's no more than 3 feet, you know, no closer than the original 3 feet. There's argument that says you can sort of you're more likely to get that variance because you're not making it more non-conforming. Does that legal sort of metric play into what you were just saying with the last slide about the side? I know this is a weird, twisted nuance, but I'm just trying to play through all the legal precedences, and I know that a variance has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but it's still zoning.
Yeah, it's where you're not,
You said, what if you put it to the side there and you're not making it any further away than it is right now? You're making it the same distance. The reverse logic of that is in variances, you can use that as leverage.
well, you're,
I know that's tangled logic.
in
but
terms
I'm
of,
just trying-
you're not making the setback less, in and of itself less conforming, but you are making more non-conforming.
You're
setback.
making more building volume that's
That's
non-conforming.
non-conforming,
Yes.
exactly.
But you're doing that in a variance situation where you're doubling the size of a building and into the setbacks, but no further than you were elsewhere. And oftentimes, that's a legal argument that gets you through variances.
Right.
So I'm just twisting the law around and trying to be argumentative about an applicant
Yeah,
being difficult.
yeah,
And just wonder, just amusing about that, that's all.
yeah, it's, let me, quickly,
And I don't wanna go down that rabbit hole, but
I'm gonna share a rabbit hole.
Here we go.
Which is from, I stumbled on this just the other day, so, and I haven't been through this entire flow chart here, but the point is that, they've tried to outline all kinds of possible scenarios. You'll see that, you know, is greater than 75% of the required setback, otherwise special permit, like, so they've clearly tried to capture more than just the sort of generic language. And this is a, don't try this at home kind of.
Could you send us copies of that, just for
Yeah.
reference?
Yeah, I think we'd like to see that.
I would too. I'd like to read it.
It's in this show, but I think this is just to point out that this gets grappled with all the time. You know, and you could probably triple the size of this chart if you really were sort of obsessed about it. So I think it's what works for Hamilton, how many properties are actually, you know.
I think early on you made the point that Hamilton's relatively simple. The code should be relatively simple to match that, and you don't want to tie yourself in knots. So I think that early advice that you gave us
Yeah.
during the first contract was good advice.
Well, you know, it is, and Amos gotten onto this, which is that the tricky part of a form-based code, it's not necessarily even form-based, but where you have requirements that are not just limiting you, but obligating you to be within a certain distance of the front yard, to build out a certain percentage, are very hard to, you know, if you're just staying behind a setback line, the language is pretty easy.
Yeah, it's sort of binary. It's
But
either
when
you
you
did it or
get-
you didn't.
Yeah, and so when you get into sort of obligations versus restrictions,
Yep.
It's very hard to sort of square that.
I understand. So I think these examples are incredibly valuable for us to feel the weight of the decisions that need to be made and how to do it. And I again would vote for, try to make it as, the code as simple as you can, and then after that, use a case-by-case kind of.
But the same, what you have to be is consistent. though.
Yes.
Yes, and
It's
that's
hard
why
to
I
be.
mentioned, I alluded to policy. In
Yeah.
other words, if you have kind of a standard way to do it that's somewhat predictable.
Right, I mean, because if it's too disparate in how you're doing things, then people are really going to complain
Yes.
Yep.
about the fairness of the process. So there has to be a process that applies to every application.
And that's where you could even lean a little bit more on guidelines. In other words, the guidelines could give you a hint of what the policy ought to be, you know, with any makeup of the planning board. So, but you can't, I don't think legally you can nail down every metric here.
No.
No.
You just cannot do it.
can't. But I think you could make a clear distinction between additions to non-conforming structures and new structures on
Conforming.
non-conforming, or parcels with non-conforming site features or other buildings, and sort of separate those things. And I think in terms of the additions to non-conforming structures, my sort of personal vote would be to just, as long as the non-conformities are not increased, and if you're really worried about the expansion sideways versus the percentage built to, and you could probably put some clarification, you know, in one sentence.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the new structures on plots with pre-existing non-conforming structure, you know, I think you could simply put language that, you know, something to the extent of that existing non-conforming site features like parking and open space, you know, may be considered but would require a special permit or,
Mhm.
you know.
Or could you again temper it and put it up front in purposes? So again, in purposes are almost like guidelines. In other words, they're soft. And if you could sort of explain the why of the purposes, you know, you could get at the fact that you're going to prioritize frontage, you know, before,
They're almost, they could become almost goals.
yeah.
If you can't achieve it, you can't. You know, I think part of the issue at Hamilton has so many small parcels in its downtown of different geometries that what's fair and reasonable in one site probably is not for another site.
Yeah.
So, you know, trying to come up with some uniformity in your decision-making would be pretty difficult, I think, because it is so complex.
Well, it could be, you know, there could be language about what that special permit will consider, right? So that it's a little bit like, you know, there's rules about what you can consider for site plan review, right? If a project says it right. And in the special permit, you have maybe lists of things that are important. There may be, you know, these are the things that will be considered as important sort of criteria. You start with the front yard and the street facing condition, right? And then you move back from there, so that at least there's some sort of, there's just some sort of record of what will be considered in terms of your assessment for a special permit.
So enough rabbit holes.
So the-
Listen some more.
That's it, that's all I got. So again, my high-level punchline is, I think, you know, I think you're pretty good on additions, and again, just probably some clarifications. As it's written right now, the code is not explicit about what to do when there's a new structure on a second
None.
structure.
On a second structure on a
So
non-conforming.
just, yeah, I wonder if there's any, for two buildings like the 224 Bay Road, two buildings, neither of which were conforming in terms of the setback. So then theoretically, there is no facade build-out ratio there because there's nothing in that zone, max minimum front yard zone.
In the existing condition,
So.
yeah.
So there's no contribution to the building and back to any kind of facade. So facade doesn't mean facing the street, it means within that zone. That's
Correct.
what that means entirely,
Correct.
yeah.
Which is why this is not increasing the nonconformity.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. If they put the addition to the side of that front building, then they would have to push it forward into that zone enough to, and then they would have to, would they meet the building ratio, facade ratio? In other words, if it, I don't know,
They could.
and then that
Or they
whole
would have
building
to-
would be conforming.
They would have to do it in a way that wasn't, again, not make it less
Yeah,
conforming.
yeah.
But yes.
Okay,
But I would argue that, and again, it's a kind of a finer point. I mean, that would be an actual
Yeah.
issue before you, but, I think it's consistent with the way that, for instance,
yeah,
you wouldn't enlarge the nonconformity of this backyard, right?
Yeah.
So it's a kind of analogous situation. Those are very quick studies.
It's not that we don't have more
You know, some of
questions.
these things, you go in circles a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? The logic can be confusing, but, I think, to Jonathan's point, I think to take it as simply as you can, to take the meaning of the code as simply as you can, and then where there is sort of doubt or concern, maybe you could consider amending
Special permit.
the code to deal specifically with that additional building situation.
Yeah, I think we have to be really careful. I mean, we've had one application dealing with this code. So I mean, we
More.
don't have a lot of experience with it, and we really don't know what we'll get. Because you're right, this building here, with this lot of this size, more likely than not, it will be torn down. And then whatever is built, it'll be
Conforming.
presumably one or two buildings, but they'll all be conforming because.
Exactly. But I don't think that this is, you know, this might not be far-fetched.
yeah.
And who knows what can happen to, the honeycomb there, which is, even though it's not a big building, it's a big part of Hamilton, if you ever go there around lunchtime and try to get a parking
get in.
space.
It does still argue for design guidelines because a lot of times people don't come in trying to go against what the intent of the code is. It's just complicated and they don't really understand what the goals are. Whereas design guidelines could be more clear about that so that they are more likely the applicant's more likely to look at sort of alternatives analysis to see if they can get closer to yes, according to design guidelines.
Well, if we're fortunate, we will get a grant that will help us
Right.
to prepare those design
So I
guidelines.
don't know if you knew that we were working toward that.
I do.
Gave us a cost estimate for the grant, so.
Do any members have any other questions?
No, I think it's been the last couple of sessions have been really informative.
Oh, yeah.
too.
It's actually fun. I mean, it's fun in the abstract. It may not be fun when we really get
This is the low stress
We're just going to have to convince the audience.
Yeah. Well, it is really a neat code. I mean, I have to say, you did such a tremendous job. I mean, it was hard to appreciate it all with all the cacophony with 3A, what was done here. I don't think the town as a whole appreciates how much work went into this and how protective it is to the character of the town while still complying with 3A.
So I have a question. What's really interesting about the presentations you've made and also about the way the code is presented is it has very clear diagrams, like this is a very clear diagram about the setbacks and the build-to zone for the building frontage. An interesting question would be, would it be useful to have submission requirements that ask the applicant to create these diagrams prior to submitting a specific proposal? Then that way, they're more likely to be clear on what is it we're after here. Whereas if they're just doing it from reading charts and then drawing a building or drawing a site design, whereas if you say in the submission requirements, you need to show, this is the format that you need to show it in.
You mean like this table?
The table and
The view.
the map showing, showing a polygon, where the build-to
Well,
line
it's-
is.
It's similar in a way to the conservation subdivision development, that
Right.
four-step process,
Yeah.
where actually the applicant, the developer, would have to give you two sets of plans. One would be a yield plan. If you followed existing zoning, what would it look like in terms of lots, in terms of streets and so forth, and gives you a yield. But if you do it according to conservation subdivision guidelines or bylaws, you identify the important features that you want to save on the site, which is terrific, and put that on a drawing, then locate the houses or the buildings so it fits in carefully with all of that. Then you connect them with roads in the end, and then lastly, draw lots if that's required. So that's sort of what I think you're saying in
Yeah,
a way.
you'd ask them to put it, put the requirements together graphically on the
Yeah.
site plan.
Mhm.
Not just in a chart, but graphically on the site plan, so that they can see, as well as the board can see, where you're complying, where you're not complying, where you're making it more non-conforming, where you're making it less.
Yeah, I mean, but by the time they come to you or they've made an application, I presume they have a certified plot plan and.
Sure,
Yeah.
but it's
So
the
those-
colored polygons showing
Yeah.
showing the form-based code.
So some surveyors will
Sure.
put those setbacks on their drawings.
Yeah, but whereas the build-to lines, they're not
Build-to
as
lines,
likely,
right.
they're not as likely to put them in, but it's really helpful, from a applicant's understanding point of view and from a planning board's.
Who would actually draw, is it an architect that would make those
Well,
zoning, or the
A surveyor
surveyor?
should do it, or the architect should do it.
Yeah.
How are we going to tell people that? How are we gonna let them know so they don't go out and spend money and then have to have the
Well, no, you
surveyor come
could say
back?
in the submission requirements, you could say you must draw
Right,
the
right.
build-to zone
Well, what if they
graphically. You
don't
just say that.
take that step and they're just getting their property surveyed in preparation for something? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's not,
But
the
usually when
surveyor doesn't survey in
when
the
the
field,
When the architect starts the project, he's gonna look at the zoning
Yeah.
bylaws.
understand.
What are the requirements?
Okay,
What are my limitations? So he's gonna understand where the limitations are, where the setbacks are.
Point is to draw it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
So
yeah.
Mark, if you recall, he took a stab at a checklist for the form-based code. But we have submission requirements for site plan review applications
Yeah, we
and the
put
whole
it there.
bit.
You could just update that, yeah. I think,
I mean, did we put in the town center code that the planning board has the authority to issue regulations? We usually put that in our I just don't recall
Yes, I think we
after.
did.
I think we did. So we can issue regulations that provide
Right.
these are the submission
Yeah,
requirements.
and that's where it would go.
And we have existing site plan requirements, so we could just potentially just update those. But like some things you have to show, like you have to show the setbacks.
Yeah, those are already checked off.
Yeah.
It's the new things that are unique to form-based code, like the build to. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's not in the submission
The plan,
requirements.
yeah.
And that's what's new to an applicant, and it's what's new to the board. And
Mhm.
it just, I think it just streamlines the process and creates visual clarity, graphic clarity.
Mhm.
And it can, I find when an applicant actually draws clearly what the requirements are, you know, in a graphic way, they're more likely to see how they can conform to the regulations and not be fighting their way through it.
Right.
That's all.
Well, the whole conversation with the planning board is just so much easier. We're all speaking the same language.
So, anyway, but that could easily be put in the regulations.
Yeah, it may also
Submission
be
requirements.
useful, this is sort of an easy one, right?
Yes, that's an easy one.
But oddly shaped parcels or corner parcels, they would have to be explicit about how they're interpreting the code or they're reading the obligation
Mhm.
and convey it graphically. So
Yep.
I think it's an easy thing to put on your requirement list.
Any other further discussion?
No?
No?
Great.
Again,
Right?
thank you so much.
Yep.
Been very helpful. Okay, the final item on our agenda is the application for an associate position that Valerie Peck has filed with or submitted to the planning board, and
Sit with us.
Right there.
sit with us, Valerie. Yes. And you all remember Valerie, she was very helpful with the Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. She was frequently before us, so
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you so much. Nice.
This is very interesting, and it's all brought about by the new town code,
The form-based code, yes.
Yeah.
that everyone's gonna be speaking the same language.
Yep.
Yeah, that's been randomness.
So do any board members have any questions for Valerie or any comments? Like welcome?
It's like, welcome.
So can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to the planning board?
Well, quite frankly, you all did. I mean, I was interested because I came into this in a very, I mean, I've been going to planning board meetings for the last several years as it related to the 100 acres next to my house. And in observing kind of all that process, which could have been an extremely stressful process, as often these kinds of things can be. But the way you all handled the situation was, first of all, you listened to everybody. And then secondly, it was a very slow, deliberate, and comprehensive approach that balanced so effectively, you know, the aesthetics and the town needs for monetary issues. And so, long story short, in witnessing the different moving parts that you had to contend with, I was very impressed with how you balanced all of those to an objective that I think most everybody felt good about. And that's something I would love to be a part
Win-win-win.
of. I mean, I have a very strong aesthetic sense. I have a very strong sense towards open space, preserving access to it. But I also recognize the need that towns change, the demographics change, and so it's an art form to really balance all those competing things. So I would love to be part of that process that you go through. I have a real estate background in acquisitions and some development, so I'm familiar with a lot of the terminology, but, you know, just listening, I mean, it may be helpful, but what it will do is help me ramp up quickly, I think, to some of the other more planning-related issues to that process. I'm good at asking a lot of questions until I understand.
Well, that's important. I mean, asking questions is the best
Clarity
way
is
to get information.
Yeah, and I'm at a point in my life when I have time to give back. So if I'm gonna give back, I wanna give back to something where I know I have the capacity to be helpful, and it's somewhat reflective of my background, you know? So, I hope that answers your question, but you guys are a very patient bunch.
Right, and we actually, have, it's 8:14.
Wow.
So I think that Valerie has the skills. She's familiar with our process. We're short an associate member. I think we'd be lucky to have you. And if anybody disagrees with me, I will entertain a motion to send a letter to approve Valerie as an associate member. And as you recall, under the zoning bylaw, section 10.4.4, I'll read it just so everyone, to refresh everyone's recollection. The position of associate member of the planning board is established for applications where the planning board has been designated as the special permit granting authority. 2 associate members shall be appointed jointly by the planning board and the board of selectmen. The terms of appointment shall be 2 years, and the associate members shall be designated in order of seniority to act as provided under General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 9. So we need a motion to approve Valerie as a member of the planning board, and then we will send our recommendation and our determination to the select board so that they can also approve you as an associate member.
May I make a motion?
You
I
certainly may.
move to have to vote on Valerie Peck's associate membership to the planning board.
Do I have a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You've got our vote.
You're welcome aboard.
If you thought it was going to be hard, you were wrong.
No, but, I have my notes just in case, but, I mean, I want to say one thing, just, I am willing, if there's anything I should read, or, obviously I know I have to get up to speed on the bylaws and certainly the town-based code, that kind of thing, but I'm willing to put in the time to kind of just get the vernacular and make sure I can ramp up quickly on some of the stuff that's coming down the pipeline, so.
I'd be happy to meet with you to give you like a 1-hour primer.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
That
Mark.
would-
That's really great. Yeah, yeah. And Mark's been, he's great.
Oh, we're so lucky to have Mark.
So the local bylaws are super helpful to read. The master plan is super helpful to read.
The
Mark-
master plan, yeah.
Yeah, Mark will talk about all this stuff. And there's various documents in the town website that are useful. A lot of times, we're overlapping into state requirements, and not that you have to sit and spend months poring through documents, but we do refer a lot to, state regulations and bylaws, and things like stormwater management bylaw comes up, and those are state documents. The good thing is that with that particular document, the first 2 sections of it are pretty accessible and written, at sort of a basic college textbook level. But then after that, it gets into engineering, and you don't have to absorb that or understand it. But I'm sure Mark will sort of guide you through these things.
Yeah, no one expects you to know the zoning. It's 200 pages. No one knows
You
it
can't
exactly.
memorize it, but to get familiar with it is super useful.
Yeah, and
Well-
to have
In law school, for example, like contracts, so what the professors would always say, read the table of contents.
Yeah.
So with our zoning bylaw, you can read the table of contents. And telecommunication towers, that's 7 pages. You might want to skip that. We just approved we just approved one. So you don't have to focus on that kind of real detailed type of thing, but the more common things that we have to deal with, like the new form-based code, to go through that. And just what it does, it enables you, you don't have to remember it all, but you know where to look.
Right.
And that's easier to read because there's a lot of illustrations, so it's not as,
Well, this gentleman, like, I didn't know the full context of what brought this on, but that was like very informative to me, just looking at some of the examples he put up there and how, kind of doing scenarios that you potentially would come up against.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that's tricky when you step into a commission like this is there's just a lot of jargon in planning, just like there is in any field, whether it's law or medicine or whatever. There's just a lot of jargon. And I don't know the easy way to navigate through that other than, when you see a word and you don't know what it means, look it up. But that's a tricky part with any diving into any field.
Speaking of that, didn't we have like a kind of a goal of revising
I was thinking of
section
that.
11
The
of our
definitions.
zoning bylaw,
Yes.
the definitions?
So
'Cause,
maybe that's your first assignment.
The other thing is you can also read minutes, so, to get you up to speed if there's any questions about what's been happening.
Well,
Yeah,
and how often do you all talk in between meetings?
Only two at a time, because if there are three of
we're
you
not really
talking,
supposed to.
you go against the Mass General Law,
Right.
open
Right.
meeting.
actually, I think it has to be more than 3, but we don't.
I think it's 3.
So you literally just communicate in these two, times?
2 people can communicate,
Yeah.
yeah.
and I'm helpful because I'm not on the board, I don't vote, so you can always ask me and I can
But we
relay
can't
things.
like get together at a
Right.
party and say, boy, well, we're gonna,
Deliberate.
what do you think of that application?
Right.
So that's partly why things take a long time, like with a complex process like Gordon Conwell, because there's a lot of moving parts and all your deliberations have to be in public meeting.
Transparency.
Yes, so what really helps then is, it really helps to do your homework before you come to the meeting. So you're not asking questions about sort of basic content and context during the meeting, but instead you're looking at the substantive pieces of it. So I find that the important time-consuming part is prior to the meeting. as
Preparation.
Preparation, really going through the information so you understand it. And then part of it is making sure that, we promote with Mark that the applicants have things in well in advance so that we're not getting things the day before and trying to absorb. That's really challenging.
Well, and with that is something you can contact an individual person, I can contact you or
Mark, yeah.
whoever and say, can you explain just the
Yeah.
context of this particular item? That would be
Yeah.
before.
The object of the open meeting law is to prevent backroom deals.
Yeah.
Everything has to be discussed in public. So you never want to have, a group of people getting together and pre-deciding something.
Yes.
You want it all out in the open.
Or even having conversations with people not on the board.
Right.
Yeah.
That you might be dealing with.
Who might be dealing with.
Oh, yeah. So
That's probably the biggest thing.
I think she'll have to take the
Yes.
ethics training.
Yes, absolutely,
yeah.
yep.
So you'll have to be sworn in by Corinne Kale, and then you'll have to take the ethics training, and that takes about, an hour or so?
30 minutes.
And, you can, if you get a question wrong, you can, it's not like you're slapped on the wrist, you get to do,
Go back.
you get a
They want to make
do-over.
sure we understand what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
and so you'll see from that ethics training, they tell you all the things you can and cannot do.
Yep.
So it doesn't always pertain to us, but it certainly pertains to the select board and then in cities where you might have relatives that come before the board, or potential, real conflicts of interest. And that's what we always want to avoid, are conflicts of interest. So if any board member had, Emil, I think, didn't you, when you did something with that lot, there was something that Emil was involved in, so he couldn't vote. So, he had
Yes,
to
yeah,
recuse himself.
absolutely.
It was very minor, but still, I forget what it was.
It was his own lot,
It was
right?
his own, yeah, but
Oh, maybe it was that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I forget what it was.
You have city planning background, so
I don't have formal city planning background. I just have a lot of sort of hands-on experience in planning and campus planning and whatnot. But I don't have any, I took one course in urban planning when I was in school. So I
Jonathan's
am not a planner.
polymath. He knows more things about more things when it comes to design and planning, and he's very thoughtful. He's very process-oriented. And Emil is an architect and has so much knowledge about all aspects of.
I'm the one with the jargon, so.
He's Mr. Jargon.
To ramp up, I can see that, but yeah.
It's fun.
No, it seems like it would be, and it's certainly a good way to keep a pulse on what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm glad you applied, Valerie, and
Yeah.
we're not meeting on July 7th because we had held an extra meeting, but our next meeting is on July 21st.
So we just have to get you approved by the select board, which should be in a couple of weeks, and then get you sworn in ethics training. So we should have you all set, ready to
Yeah.
go for the next meeting.
And because I had a sense of how this would go, I have the email drafted to the select board on my computer.
Nice.
And tomorrow morning, I'll hit send.
And then in the meantime, I can catch up with you and
Yes,
start
yep,
doing some homework.
sure.
But thank you, it's an honor to work with you all.
It's great to have you aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Yes.
Well, shall I make a motion?
Oh, right, yeah.
Unless there's anything else that you want us to hear? I move that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Wow, we've been really doing well.
Thanks, Matt.